Have you ever noticed how justice is actually, well, a lot like love? Think about it. We all intuitively know what love is, even if we can't perfectly define all its subtle shades. We can feel it, and we absolutely want it for ourselves. Justice is exactly the same way. We all want justice. We all have this immediate gut feeling when something is just unfair. But defining its precise, concrete rules for an entire society, that is a massive and honestly fascinating challenge. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into this core chapter on political theory, exploring exactly what social justice is, how we actually achieve it, and how it plays out in the messy, real world. But first, imagine this for a second. Imagine if you could just cheat the system. You could avoid paying taxes, twist the rules, and get incredibly wealthy without ever getting caught. I mean, why not do it? Why should we care about justice if being unjust seems way more profitable? This isn't a new question. Actually, back in ancient Greece, the philosopher Plato tackled this exact dilemma in his famous book, The Republic. A young guy named Glaucon asks Socrates this very question. And Socrates' brilliant answer was basically this. If everyone were to be unjust and everyone just manipulated the rules to suit themselves, literally no one would be secure. We'd all be living in a state of constant fear and instability. So it's actually in our own rational, long-term self-interest to obey the laws and just play fair. So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover 1. The meaning of justice, 2. The 3 principles of justice, 3. The challenge of just distribution, 4. Rawls' veil of ignorance, 5. Providing the basic minimum, and finally, 6. Markets versus state intervention. All right, jumping into section 1, the meaning of justice from ancient roots to modern rights. Now, while ancient cultures from India to China view justice strictly top-down, mostly as a king's sacred duty, our modern understanding has fundamentally shifted. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant was huge in shifting this focus. He argued that human beings inherently possess dignity. And because of this dignity, true justice isn't just about a king keeping order anymore. It's about giving every single person the opportunity to develop their talents and pursue their own goals. Justice today means recognizing that human dignity and giving equal consideration to absolutely everyone. Let's move to Section 2, 3 Principles of Justice, the Pillars of Fairness. Modern societies basically rely on 3 main pillars to figure this out: equal treatment for equals, proportionate justice, and the recognition of special needs. Governments have to constantly juggle these 3 pillars to keep society balanced. Let's look at how they actually work together. So the first principle, equal treatment, means people shouldn't be discriminated against based on class, caste, race, or gender. If a man and a woman, or 2 people of different castes, are doing the exact same job, whether that's breaking stones or delivering pizzas, they absolutely must receive the same pay. That's a baseline. But treating everyone strictly equally isn't always fair, is it? Imagine if everyone in your class got the exact same test score regardless of how hard they studied. That's where proportionate justice comes in. Provided everyone starts with equal basic rights, it is perfectly fair to reward people differently based on their effort, the specialized skills they bring, or the physical dangers involved. Like, the much higher wages justified for underground mining. But there is a third piece to this puzzle. Principle 3 focuses on recognizing special needs. Treating people strictly equally can sometimes be deeply unfair if they aren't starting from the same baseline. Think of someone with a physical disability or a child who has literally never had access to good education or basic health care. If a society simply treats them exactly the same as someone born into immense wealth and privilege, the result is just going to be an unequal, unjust society. So governments have to balance the first 2 rules by providing special help for the marginalized. Which brings us to Section 3, the challenge of just distribution, leveling the playing field. This is where the theory hits the messy real world. Social justice isn't just about passing fair laws on paper. It's about how governments physically distribute goods, services, and opportunities. Take the Indian Constitution, for example. To achieve basic equality of life conditions, the Constitution abolished the practice of untouchability. State governments instituted land reforms to redistribute land more fairly. They also introduced quotas for educational admissions and reservations in government jobs for marginalized groups like scheduled castes and tribes. Now, as we all know, policies that redistribute resources or create quotas can provoke fierce passions and really intense debate, mostly because people feel their own family's future is at stake. But the core aim of these measures, from a theoretical standpoint, is to pursue that third principle of justice we just talked about, helping the disadvantaged reach a baseline of equality. Let's look at a fascinating way to frame this in Section 4, Rawls' veil of ignorance, a thought experiment. To understand if helping the disadvantaged is actually fair and not just charity, we can explore a truly mind-bending thought experiment by the famous political philosopher John Rawls. He calls it the veil of ignorance. Rawls asks us to imagine that we have to design the rules for a brand new society. But here's the catch. We have to design these rules from behind this veil, meaning you have absolutely no idea what your position will be in this new society. You don't know if you'll be born rich or poor, into a privileged upper caste or a marginalized lower caste, able-bodied or disabled. You are entirely blind to your own future identity. By entirely flipping our perspective like this, Rawls argues that as a rational person acting in your own self-interest, you wouldn't create a society with extreme poverty or harsh discrimination. Why? Because you might end up at the very bottom. You would rationally choose to create rules that protect the worst off, ensuring that even the lowest rung of society has a decent life, just in case you end up there. It's a brilliant way of proving that fairness isn't just about morality, it's deeply rooted in our own rational self-interest. Section 5. Providing the basic minimum, the foundation of fairness. If we were all sitting behind that veil of ignorance, we'd all pretty quickly agree that a just society has to guarantee the fundamental conditions for survival for every single person. So what does that basic minimum actually look like? Well, organizations like the World Health Organization help calculate these basic needs. Generally, it includes basic nourishment, adequate housing, a secure supply of clean drinking water, basic education, and a minimum wage. A just society isn't about making everyone's income absolutely identical. That's not the goal. But it is about ensuring the gap isn't so massive that the poor have zero chance to ever improve their lives. Now, providing these basics poses an incredibly heavy burden on governments, particularly in populous countries like India. And deciding exactly how to deliver this heavy burden sparks our final major debate. Which leads us to Section 6, Markets versus State Intervention, the Great Debate. Let's impartially look at the two main sides of this debate, because it's a big one. On one side, you have the proponents of free markets. They argue that open competition, free from state interference, is simply the fairest system. It rewards merit and talent neutrally. The market doesn't care about your caste or your gender. It only cares about your skills and what you produce. It also provides the greatest consumer choice and efficiency. But on the other side, advocates for state intervention argue that the government absolutely must actively step in to redistribute resources and ensure basic facilities are provided to everyone. Their argument is that unregulated markets will inevitably leave certain vulnerable people behind. Critics of the pure free market point out one very specific flaw. Private businesses are, by definition, driven by profit. Therefore, they might completely ignore remote rural areas when it comes to building high-quality schools or hospitals, simply because it just isn't profitable to go there. Or they might provide cheap, substandard services to the poor. Furthermore, just entering a free market requires basic resources. If you're sick or old or severely uneducated, you can't even compete in the first place. This is why many argue that state intervention is absolutely necessary to ensure basic justice isn't sacrificed on the altar of profit. Ultimately, these debates in a democracy are incredibly healthy. Let's look at this beautiful quote from B.R. Ambedkar. A just society is that society in which ascending sense of reverence and descending sense of contempt is dissolved into the creation of a compassionate society. Regardless of whether you lean toward free markets or state intervention, the ultimate goal of all these theories and chapters on political theory is exactly this: tearing down contempt and building a truly compassionate society. We've covered the ancient roots of justice, the three modern pillars, and the real-world debates of distribution. But I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If you were stripped of your identity right now, your wealth, your background, your education, and placed behind Rawls' veil of ignorance, how would you organize society? What rules would you insist upon to protect yourself? Think about that today. It kind of changes exactly how you see the world around you, doesn't it? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.